Good evening. My name is Finbarr Jewell, and I'm here to share my own religious miracle, standing before you, a living miracle. I'm from Wales. At the age of 10, I became sick. My mother called the local doctor from a neighbour's phone, as we had no phone. The doctor arrived and informed my mother that once he returned to the office, he would call the hospital and send an ambulance. Unfortunately, the doctor failed to call for an ambulance due to memory issues. That was his excuse. 2 days passed and my mother was getting very concerned because of the pain I was experiencing. She called the doctor's office, the second time, and another doctor visited me and called for an ambulance. When the ambulance arrived, I was rushed into surgery because we later learned my appendix had burst. I was admitted to the hospital and unfortunately it got worse for me. The hospital said that my appendix had burst and I had developed peritonitis, a life-threatening condition. After 6 weeks of being in hospital, I was getting better. I wasn't getting better. I didn't feel well. I was a child, but knew that something wasn't right because I didn't have the energy to do anything but lie in a hospital bed. So to add to my notes, I spent so much time in the hospital bed that I developed bed sores. So even today, on my spine, I have the sores because the cotton sheets were just too hard for my skin. My parents, who were devout Catholics, called the local parish priest, a Father Tompkins, and he came to my hospital bed multiple times to pray for my recovery and anointing of healing. However, I did not recover and I became weaker. My parents told me that Father Tompkins was called back multiple times to pray upon me because I wasn't getting better and getting worse. Throughout all of this, my parents, my entire church, and Father Tompkins, my school, prayed for me to heal and recover. The hospital tried to do what they could, but nothing was helping. I was basically just getting weaker and weaker. After 3 months of this, I became worse, and eventually I was in a state where I slipped in and out of consciousness. Unbeknown to me, the hospital had told my parents that there wasn't anything else that could be done, and the hospital had basically given up, or gave up. They really didn't know what else they could do to help me and told my parents to make final arrangements for me because the hospital expected me to die. My parents made arrangements to order a coffin, and plans were made that when I die, I would be buried in the family grave in Ireland. A death certificate was made or was awaiting to be signed in the sister's office. The only thing that was missing, it was dated because I wasn't expected to live that night. It was dated, and the only thing that was missing from the death certificate was the signature of the attending doctor or the sister of the ward that night. And basically, they knew, the doctors or the nurses knew that I just wouldn't make it through the night. My parents brought my 5 siblings to my hospital bed to say goodbye. And even today, at the age of 64, I can still remember them standing around the bed. It was a very grey day because although I was slipping in and out of consciousness, I was still able to look out to this window and look up into the hills and see the fields, and I just wasn't aware what was going on. Father Tompkins, who had previously had come to my bedside to anoint me and say prayers with me, was told of the news, and my parents requested that the last rites be given as though they thought I was going to die that night. Father Tompkins understood and decided that only a miracle would save me with the power of God's divine intervention. And he knew about miracles because within 90 to 100 miles, a person had been executed for his religion. His name was Father John Kemble. So Father Tompkins was aware of St. John Kemble and his hand, and he had decided that since the medical profession had basically given up on me, that he was going to go to this church and retrieve the skeleton hand of Father John Kemble. And the hand was kept in a cathedral in Hereford, England, which I subsequently visited with my parents when I became stronger. Father Tompkins made arrangements, and from what I understand, Saint Kemble's hand was never taken out of the church in Hereford. But Father Tompkins persisted, got permission, went to Hereford to retrieve the hand in faith that God would provide a miracle for me. I remember Father Tompkins arriving at my hospital bed. So this priest, when you think of priests, you don't think of them as big, burly individuals. But this priest was about 6'4", 250 pounds. So he had a very imposing figure, which I could remember standing at the bed, at the bottom of my bed. I remember that he arrived at my hospital bed. However, I distinctly remember that he was not doing what he had previously done before. Because what he had previously done before, he would anoint me, giving me the last rites with holy oil. So he would make the sign of the cross on my forehead, on my feet, and on my hands. But in this instance, it was different. What Father Kemble had brought from Hereford Cathedral was the skeletal hand of a saint, Father John Kemble. And he had informed my parents that he wanted to give me the last rites with the hand. So instead of being anointed with holy oil, he was going to place the grey, shriveled, severed hand on my forehead and on my feet and on my both wrists. And I was petrified. I was truly petrified because, as weak as I was, I could see this grey hand coming towards me, and I was just so fearful that the only way I could get settled was for him to put the hand in a plastic bag. And once the hand was in the plastic bag and it wasn't actually going to touch me with the hand, then I became more passive, more accepting, and he proceeded with the procedure. I was basically squirming in bed. I just wouldn't let him come to me because I'm a 10-year-old, and you have this large, imposing figure, as good as he was, with his hand. And anyway, he placed the hand in a clear plastic bag, and for what I understand, he prayed and asked God for help through the intercession of the saints to bless and heal me. He also administered another rite, and together it's what is called the last rites. It was clear to everyone that I was about to die. I survived the night, and from then I slowly recovered. The hospital staff said it was a miracle, as they could not provide a scientific explanation of why I lived through the night and why I recovered. My parents and Father Tompkins knew it was a miracle provided by God, and I accept that. A gift from God in which I was healed miraculously, and I lived. After that night, my parents said the rosary every day to St. John Kemble and thanked God for my healing. This happened when I was only 10 years old, and from what I understand now, I realize that my parents, Father Tompkins, and the people at my church were praying for me for many months, as I quote, critically ill. I'm a living miracle, and I thank God for that miracle. I believe in miracles, and I share my experience with you today to have you believe that God provides miracles, to have faith in God, and that prayers work. Thank you.